Hello and welcome to STEM Talk. I'm Alex Block.
And I'm Haley Bott. This is our show where we dive into all things STEM. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And lucky for us, today's topic is one of the most important problems in today's world.
Haley, COVID, right?
COVID.
It is so crazy. You know, our whole school feels like it's being shut down because of COVID.
And our show.
Yeah, so you might be thinking, hey, why is Alex here? It's because Michael, our usual host, has COVID, unfortunately. He could not be here today. Michael, I'm looking at you right there. I'm hoping you're feeling better, and hopefully we will see you back in the next episode.
Yes, we will. So, we've had, how many competitions we've had so far? Two, right?
Two.
Well, two, and then we just had one this weekend where only 4 members could go because of COVID, which is really sad.
It's kind of a weird thing, right? Because normally the competitions are so much fun. We're a part of Fire Robotics, me and Haley, and for Fire we have competitions with other schools, and they're usually a blast to do. You're on a bus, you're on a team. It's like a sports team.
Yeah, we have like almost 15 people coming, and then now they're like you can only bring 4 people in, and it's super annoying because like the new members can't come and see like what's going on. Even if you want to come, you're not allowed to. That's really.
It's kind of sad, right?
It's really sad.
But back on the topic of sports, right?
Yes.
I saw the other day that there's a petition to let sports fans back in the stadiums. And hopefully Dr. Block, who we're having on shortly, will see it, and all the other staff will see it, and hopefully we can have fans back in the stadium pretty soon.
Yep, especially the cheering and the very nice audience.
I mean,
super fun.
All these varsity athletes train their entire high school careers to be.
Especially the seniors, feel really bad for them because
I feel bad, right?
There's like no fans, nothing.
It really is kind of sad. I mean, when all sports, like professional sports, went like no fans in the stadium, it was a real downer in the entire vibe of the whole arena.
Yeah, even like watching like a live stream of it, it's like not the same as like being there.
No.
And like even watching it, you see like how empty the stands are. It's really
nothing can
crazy.
Replace that.
Yeah.
So our show today is really great. We have Dr. Handler from St. Barnabas blessing us with his presence.
And we also have Dr. Block coming on later, who's superintendent of schools here at Livingston.
Unfortunately, I'm not related to Dr. Block. I get asked all the time. I would love to be related to him, but unfortunately, I'm not. I mean, if my teachers are going to keep giving me good grades for that, maybe I am related. Who knows?
Okay, Alex. So COVID in school is actually, I think there's been like over 100 cases.
Yeah, I heard the other week there was 142 cases in 1 week, which is crazy.
Especially like, I think it was like a few days before break started. That like winter break, yeah.
Yeah.
And every like thing just sparked up, and I was like, what is going on? And like we weren't allowed to like go outside and like film our projects and stuff in some classes, or like sit in the hallways and stuff, and it was crazy.
Really is crazy.
One of my teachers like literally took out like a ruler and like measured 3 feet, and then she like made us put all the desks in, and I was like,
oh yeah. So
oh my God.
This whole new COVID world with Omicron is really something that we got to get used to living in.
Especially having the teachers having COVID.
Yeah, the teachers having COVID is a real thing, real issue. I'm happy that all of my teachers at least are well and good now.
Mine were actually, I had a teacher who was gone for like about like a week and a half, and it was crazy because we did like nothing in class because you don't have a teacher, you can't learn anything anyway.
Yeah.
So it was like a week and a half gone.
Yeah. I'm really happy that we're starting to get back to normal. We're sitting here again. We're back in the studio just like we wanted to be. And yeah. All right. Now over to Dr. Handler.
All right. Thank you, Michael and Haley. I'm here with Dr. Handler. Dr. Handler, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Eric Handler. I am a board-certified emergency medicine physician working in the emergency department at St. Barnabas, actually now Cooperman Barnabas Medical Center. I've been there approximately 18 years, and for the past 2 years have been the chairman of the emergency department.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with me today. How you doing?
Pleasure. Doing all right, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, first off, what exactly is COVID? I know it gets thrown around. We all know we have to wear masks because of it, but like when it comes down to it, what is it?
So COVID is the everyday term for the SARS-CoV-2 virus that mostly causes respiratory symptoms, can cause patients hypoxia, which is low oxygen levels. Of late, some of the newer variants have caused the non-typical or non-traditional symptoms, which are more GI symptoms. So patients are presenting now with abdominal discomfort, diarrhea, nausea, along with sometimes these respiratory symptoms.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So how has COVID affected the ER and exactly what you do, right?
Wow, that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
So it has affected the emergency department, and not just the emergency department, but the hospital, the community in so many ways, dating back to March of 2020, when we saw the initial wave of patients. The volume of patients entering the hospital necessitated closing essentially all other ancillary services. So the operating room shut down. We were not doing any cardiac procedures. It really became an institution that was dedicated to treating the patients that were presenting in respiratory distress from the virus. At our max, we had over 600 patients in the hospital, close to 130 on ventilators, and really stressed the facility, but also showed us what we can do when we come together as a community, not only in the hospital, but community at large, to treat our patients.
Right. All right. So now there are a recent shortage of COVID tests. There's people standing in line for hours in New York City to get them. So how often should people be tested?
So fortunately, at the acute care side of things, we don't have a shortage of the testing. We actually have PCR tests. We also, at different areas of the department, do use antigen testing depending on what is needed. All patients being admitted to the hospital do receive a PCR test, so we know their status and we can cohort them. And patients that are coming for procedures also do get tested to make sure that we're keeping people as safe as possible. In regards to when to test, that has morphed a little bit with the new Omicron variant. The initial recommendation was test between 5 and 7 days. Now that people can become positive a little bit sooner, the recommendation is 3 to 5 days. If you are using an antigen test and having symptoms, it really is recommended to do serial testing. So maybe every 24, 36 hours, repeat a test if you're still having symptoms. It can take 2 or 3 to finally get that positive test.
Right. So these tests are not always accurate. I know people who have been tested, even PCR tests, and got tested negative, but in fact they really were positive. So how can we really trust these tests?
So again, the PCR tests are the gold standard of testing, be it COVID or any other respiratory viral illness. And they are 97 to 99% accurate. It's extremely unlikely to have a false positive test. If you test too early, though, you can get a false negative, which again, if you have an exposure, we really recommend not doing that PCR test day 0 or day 1, because you may not have created the viral load to have a positive test. And even more so with the rapid antigen testing, it really can take several days before there's enough viral load in the nasal mucosa to have these tests become positive. When there is low prevalence, and unfortunately right now that's not the case, that's when there's just a very low caseload in the community, the rapid antigen test can actually have a false positive rate as well. But right now we are more likely to see false negatives than anything else. If you do get a rapid antigen test, given the high prevalence right now, assume it's positive, and you should isolate, and your family members and those in close contact should also start that 3 to 5 day period in regards to testing.
Of course. All right. So this show is a STEM show. We do want to talk about the science and everything like that. So you were in the ER since day 1 of COVID. So did you see new technology come about, or current technology used in different ways during COVID?
So in regards to technology, it really was early on was the testing and how we could best utilize that to be able to cohort patients and keep people safe. Very early on, the testing really was not where it is today in regards to being able to give people that quick answer. Even when we admitted a patient, sometimes we would be waiting for 8-12 hours for the result, depending on the staff we had in the lab and what tests we were able to run at the time. Now, again, we can get that answer within 20 minutes using PCR at the hospital. In regards to technology, for treatment, we have seen some great technologies come about. The best one is the vaccine.
Right.
And I cannot implore people enough to get vaccinated. It is very well tolerated and really can help prevent disease, not only in yourself, but you are protecting the community at large when you vaccinate. Not only do you decrease the likelihood of you getting sick, should you contact COVID, you're decreasing the amount of virus shedding you're going to be doing and the likelihood you're going to spread it to others. In regards to treatment, there are new treatments, monoclonal antibodies, which have been around for other illnesses, but were created for COVID as well. And that's where, through technology, the antibody that is used to attach itself to the COVID protein, the spike protein, we in the lab make that same protein thousands and thousands of times and can deliver that intravenously or IV to the patient. It can also be given as a subcutaneous or underneath the skin injection. And just last week, the FDA gave approval to both Merck and Pfizer for their product. One is called Paxlovid, and the other is molnupiravir, and that's the Merck product. They work similarly, but somewhat different. So the Merck product is a polymerase inhibitor, and the Paxlovid is a polymerase, and the other one is a protease inhibitor, very similar to what initially was used for HIV treatment, paired with a second medication to make it last a little bit longer in the body. And so these stop viral replication in similar yet different ways.
Right. All right. So technology, of course, means masks. So
Another good one. Yes, you're correct.
I'm wearing KN95. What mask should most people be wearing?
So yes, KN95 would be the standard. I went with the double surgical mask just because I know that you're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, and I've also recovered, so the likelihood of you and I transmitting to each other is very low. But where that isn't known, for example, schools, restaurants, out in public, given the Omicron variant being so easily transmissible, it really is recommended to go with the N95, KN95, or the KF94 are the three models that really have been shown to significantly decrease transmission. And while they are an excellent technology, they are not a new technology,
right,
but definitely something that we've morphed into today's pretty much everyday activities.
Yeah, definitely. I never leave the house without my mask.
Yeah.
So we talked about, you said before you don't know if other people are vaccinated or if other people had COVID. So that being said, is it still safe to travel?
So it is safe to travel. Again, if you're vaccinated, that does add a layer of protection. If you're unvaccinated or at risk, be it health conditions or for other reasons, then really you may want to second guess or rethink that decision. But overall, in particular, air travel, wearing a mask, the HEPA filtration that's available, the being on the plane itself is relatively low risk. The greater at-risk area is being in the airport around many other people. Again, I like to think that people do or try to do the right thing, but again, you've got people traveling with children that are too young to wear a mask, too young to be vaccinated. So if you're at risk or have other underlying risky health conditions, you really want to rethink being in those large public spaces.
Right. All right. And finally, if you could say something to all the people of Livingston out there watching this, what would you say to them?
Number one is, if you haven't yet, get vaccinated. With Omicron, you are 5 times likely to become positive than somebody that's not vaccinated, and 10 times likely to be hospitalized and become critically ill. Unfortunately, we see this time and time again. And right now, due to the latest COVID surge, we are again decreasing some of our elective procedures. We haven't canceled them altogether, but these are patients who otherwise need life-saving and life-modifying procedures that are now being put on hold because we're having to care for patients that are in the hospital, and the vast majority are coming into the hospital because of lack of vaccination, and those are the patients that are most ill. So again, this is something where you're not only helping yourself, but you're also helping your neighbor, your loved ones, your friends and family, and really cannot impress enough the importance of being vaccinated.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Handler. Now back to you, Michael and Haley.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Handler, for that amazing interview. And thank you, Alex.
Of course. All right, we're here with the amazing Dr. Block, who's taking time out of his very busy day to be here with us, and we're so thankful. So, Dr. Block, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Dr. Block. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Livingston. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and you know, I get to, as I say to all the elementary school students, I get to work in all the schools in the district and work closely with the principals, and my office is over at the Board of Education offices, which is right across the street from Heritage Middle School. So very happy to be on the show and appreciate you having me here.
Thank you. We appreciate you having us here.
Yeah, yeah. So how long have you been superintendent in Livingston?
So I've been here 2.5 years. They've been very interesting 2.5 years.
Oh,
so not if you had asked me back then what I expected to happen, couldn't have predicted it. So
what about before you started working as superintendent? What did you do?
So I started as a teacher. I was a social studies teacher, middle school, 8th grade.
Not in Livingston, right?
Not in Livingston,
No.
right. So I was in Westfield School District in Union County. And then I became an assistant principal in Westfield. And then went to Summit and became the principal of the middle school in Summit, and did that for a long time. And then went to their central office where I was in charge of all the staffing, all the human resources.
So you
in
worked your way
Summit.
up.
And then came here.
Nice.
So that's been my journey.
Right. All right. I mean, I know you know my cousins, the other Blocks, the other Blocks.
I do, yeah. So many blocks, so little
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But yes, they were all students at the middle school when I was the principal there, and fine performers. Got to see them in all the shows, and I know your oldest cousin Max went on to sing in college, and talented group, talented family of the Blocks.
Yeah, I have a lot to live up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So have you experienced anything like COVID in like your 2.5 years before you started? Because I know there was a lot of things before COVID hit that happened in the city.
Yeah, so it's been, like I said, it's been quite an adventure. We started in my first year after only being here about 6 months. We had our ransomware attack.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
If you remember that.
In 8th grade.
Where you were in 8th grade at
Yeah.
the time. So that was my introduction. So, and then really, believe it or not, COVID started right after that. If you remember the early days, it was in January, and it was overseas, and we were worried about people that traveled, and we were trying to put things into place where people who travel would quarantine, and then before we knew it, in February and March, it started coming into the United States, and then what we thought could never happen in schools, we shut down and went to remote learning. It was something we never thought would happen, but that was that March, and then it's been nearly 2 years. In March, it'll be 2 years since then.
That's crazy to think about.
We've been dealing with it for certainly much longer. I don't know if you remember, but when we put out the notice when we initially went to remote learning, we said we thought we'd be home for about 2 weeks.
I remember.
And we were looking forward to returning and having it be over in 2 weeks. Yeah. So up to then, I don't know that we've, at least in my lifetime, I don't remember experiencing an emergency that really changed our lives in a meaningful way that stretched out much longer than a month or two, you know.
Yeah.
So 2 years is a lot.
Yeah. And speaking on like the students, like the 2 weeks, I remember like me and my friends were like, oh, I'll see you in 2 weeks. We left all our stuff in our gym lockers or lockers, and it was crazy when we figured out we were staying for more than 2 weeks.
I still remember when they sent the email out originally. I was in my 8th grade art class, and when we walked in, and there was like a rumor about it, and we didn't know if it was true, if we were actually going to go home. And then my teacher told us, and then I remember I was walking to social studies, so all the way across the school. I remember I was talking to my buddy the entire time about, oh, it'll only be 2 weeks. It'll be nice to get away from school for a bit.
And at the beginning, it kind of felt nice, right?
Yeah.
It was a change of pace. We were home, but at least for me, it kind of got old real quick.
Yeah, it was like.
So, that being said, do you have any stories? I mean, you guys at the Board of Education are so professional. Do you have any stories about anything funny ever happening on a Zoom call or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we all, people who leave their sound on or their video on when they don't know it. That happens even when you're quote unquote in the professional world.
Right.
My favorite is the people that just kind of walk through shots. You're talking to somebody and the dog walks by or their kids walk by, or I know I have 2 kids at home and they walk into my, I was relegated. I was only home for about 2 months, April and May. I was back in the office by June, but I was relegated to the kitchen because everybody else had taken all the good spots in the house. So I was told I had to work in the kitchen. So, if somebody needed a banana, I'd be in like an official meeting with people in the district or the principals or other superintendents, and all of a sudden I'd see in the camera that my wife or my daughter was behind me getting a piece of fruit. Come on, I'm in a meeting here, So,
yeah.
I think we've all had situations like that.
Like, I remember my 8th grade teacher, she'd have her 2 cats just walking on the computer, and we'd just be having a very deep conversation about the Mauryan Empire, and then there's just the cats just coming back and forth.
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
And my poor kids, if they walked by and say hello to everybody, they don't know who's on the screen, but you feel like you'd have to make the introduction, right? So, but I haven't had any incredibly embarrassing situations, thank goodness. So
Yeah, luckily.
that camera can be, you got to make sure when you're done that camera's off and that sound is off.
Every 5 minutes, you're I muted, my camera's off.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
You got to double check those things.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are wondering, especially because COVID protocols are different every school. So how do you decide what COVID precautions you take in school?
That's a great question. So, at the beginning of this, so much was placed on schools to make decisions about what really were health issues. And while we're all trained in delivering education and helping kids learn, we're not really trained in health issues. So we put together that first summer, we put together a group, different groups of people from the community. We worked with our district physician, and then and the health department. There is a local health department. We work really closely with them. But then we put together a group of physicians. One is Dr. Handler, who I know you just interviewed.
Yeah, it's great.
And he's in our what we call our physicians panel. So when we're making decisions about protocols and we're making decisions about whether or not to open or whether to be remote, or even new guidelines come down from the Department of Health, we meet with the Department of Health, but we also meet with our physicians group. And Dr. Handler's been great being a part of that, and getting advice from somebody like Dr. Handler, who is a medical professional and lives this every day, has been really valuable to making decisions about what happens in the schools. And then we take their advice and we have to apply it to what works in a school. So then we meet with the principals and we meet with our supervisors, and they get to sort of take the advice that we've been given and figure out how that works in a school.
Right. So on the Livingston webpage, I was doing a little bit of research because we have you on, making sure I knew everything.
Okay.
So
good.
I saw on the school website there's an emergency closure plan, emergency virtual plan.
Yeah.
Can you give some insight on that?
Yeah, so in addition to kind of the medical part of it, the Department of Education, all of the state government plays a role too. So there's the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education. And one of the things, so last year we had to put together what they called a return to school plan, which was taking it from remote to hybrid to full-time in person, which we went through last year. So we had to have that plan. And thank goodness by April, May, we were all open full-time, and anybody who wanted to be in person could be in person.
Yeah.
This year we had to have an emergency, so that plan went away because we were all back in May. So we no longer needed a reopening plan. We needed a plan for what would happen if there was an emergency and we had to go remote. And so we posted that to the website of what we would do and how we would do it. And the great thing in Livingston is we are very, very fortunate that we were able to give everybody a laptop or Chromebook. We have the technology that we need, that if we needed to go remote, we could. We have the bandwidth to make sure everybody has internet access. So that's all part of our plan.
All right. Yeah, well, I'm sure one-to-one is so helpful for that. I mean, I love my school computer. I use it every day.
I'm glad. Well, and there are a lot of districts where that is not the case.
Yeah.
And,
some people, like my cousins, go to a school. They have to buy their own computer, and it's crazy.
Yeah. So, and you get into those situations. We just assume everybody has one and owns one and has internet access. That's not necessarily so. And in certain communities, it's even less so, where maybe there's a higher level of number of people that can't afford to have internet in the house or have laptops. So those communities really had a tough time implementing remote learning because without a computer, how do you learn remotely? So there were some communities in the state where teachers were driving around dropping work off at students' houses.
Those are dedicated teachers.
So we are really very lucky. And our plan is easier comparatively because we have the equipment that we can use, and we can say we guarantee that everybody has access to a device and everybody has access to the internet.
Right.
I know a bunch of people last year, including myself. We didn't really join that many clubs because on top of being on Zoom for 8 till 2:30 and then this other Zoom. After that, we were getting tired and everything. So I just wanted to know, and a bunch of students are wondering this as well, about why we can come to school, but the clubs have to be online.
So the last 2 weeks, as you know, have been a real challenge.
Yeah.
So we were, up until we went on break, really, we were doing all of our clubs and things live and in person. What we had to do for the last 2 weeks is really focus on keeping the school day intact and keeping our schools open. So we went to the Department of Health and our physicians panel, and they said really it's going to be difficult to keep schools open because there's going to be a lot of people who get this Omicron strain of the virus. So one of the ways you can help keep schools open is to limit things that happen in person outside of the school day. So we didn't want to cancel things, but we made some things remote. Now the great thing is, as of Monday really, the numbers are starting to come down, the case numbers are down, the transmission numbers are down. So we're just watching that for a few days, but if that holds, we can start opening those things up again.
So we don't have a ton of time left, but there's one question that is super important to me and super important to a lot of the people who I've told about the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard, but a lot of the students are making a petition to let students and visitors back in for sports games. I wanted to know your opinion on that and why we still have the decision made to keep the arenas closed.
Well, what I just talked about in terms of the extracurriculars was the decision to limit spectators at sporting events. Actually, the recommendation was made to stop all extracurriculars for the first 2 weeks of January because it was predicted that the case numbers were going to jump. We didn't want to cancel the games. Actually, we wanted to do the opposite. We wanted to make sure we were able to keep the activities running. So we know that smaller crowds means less contact, which means that it's a little bit safer. So we decided to limit the amount of spectators. But again, now that things are looking better, we're going to look at that for a couple of days. And I think, we'll be able to make some decisions that'll open it up a little bit more.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and coming to answer our questions.
I really appreciate you inviting me. It was great to be here. Thanks.
Well, thanks
Thank
for
you so
watching
much, Dr.
STEM
Bill.
Talk, and we'll see you on next month's episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Mm-mm.